All right, peace, peace. Barghani Islam, Salam, Hetepu, Rahubat, Gino Lakuni Nani Chief Noble Bandera El Amin, back in the building. And today I got my homeboy KB is in the building. What it do?
What's good,
So
everyone?
what's up? What's up, man? It's been a minute.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So tonight, we're gonna be discussing about Indians and Moors, slaves, and treaties. All right, we're gonna look at what is defined as an Indian and what is an Indian, what kind of relationship they have to the land, what was going on back then with their name, all that. We're gonna get into all that. We're gonna look at everything tonight about this whole thing about Native Americans even being the true Moors, right? Were the Moors here first before the Indians? Were the uh, original people of were they Moors, black, Negro? Were the slave? What were they? Was slave ships? All that. We're gonna talk about a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? So before we get into that, y'all, please, anybody in the building, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm gonna hit you with an ad real quick. All right, before we get into the show. Yes, knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenousmoors.org, your one-stop shop for indigenous needs. All right, all right. So we back in the building. Um, like I said, today I want to talk about the Indians, man. Like I've had discussions over the past several days where we've been discussing about the land. A lot of people out here saying that the land is from the Moors were here first, and that the original people, the indigenous people on the land, are so-called black people, right? So I don't know. It's been a lot of stuff been going on. You can go back to one of our old videos back in the day. There's a lot of TikTok videos. There's a lot of people saying that these people are the real indigenous people are melanated, dark skinned, melanated people, right? So we kind of want to get into this distinction between like the Indian, because the Indian is always getting thrown around, and so I don't know if we really understand what Indian are, right? Because um, the so-called Indians is what they say was the first ones here. So we're gonna look at what's really going on with that, right? So let me see. I'm gonna get into this. You want to say something real quick, bro, or I'm gonna get into this screen share real quick.
Oh, no, really, go right ahead.
All right, let's go to it. Let's get to it. So, like, the first thing I wanted to look at was, the name of the Native American, because they call themselves Native Americans now, but back in the day, they used to be called Indians, right? So let's look at this real quick, so I can see it on the screen. So it's talking about the Native American controversy. I think I chose this because I wanted to show something. So they say the Native American name controversy is an ongoing discussion, changing terminology used by indigenous peoples of the Americas. So the natives do associate themselves with the term indigenous as well, right? So let's look at this a little further. It said that after Europeans discovered Americas, So they call most of the indigenous people collectively Indians. So we know that Christopher Columbus, he was really the first one to use the term Indians. So and I think he was selling for the Portuguese, right? So the Portuguese are really the ones, excuse me, the ones that came up with the term Indian. But then it says the distinct people in the Arctic were called Eskimos, and they have declined in usage. So the Europeans seem like they collectively just started naming, people like they do, naming them Indians, right? Eskimos, these type of things. So it says when discussing a broad group of people, naming may be based on shared language, or region, or historical relationship, right? So I'm not going to tear up these names, but these are the different names of a lot of the so-called indigenous people in the Americas. So really, when we're talking about these people, there wasn't a term for all of them. They were just whatever tribe they were, and collectively they were called Indian. It says although Indian has been the most common collective name, many English ex- exonyms. They say that. Yeah, exonyms have been used to refer to indigenous peoples of the Americas, known as the New World, who were resident within their own territories when the European colonists arrived in the 15th, 16th century. Some of these names were based on, then this was saying, some of these names were based on French, Spanish, or other European language terminology used by earlier explorers and colonialists, many of which were derived from the names of the tribes of each other. So they saying, they did come up with other names, but truthfully, like we're looking at the name Indian, right? So then it's saying like in Canada, the term First Nations is generally used for peoples covering the Indian Act. So we're gonna look at the Indian Act too in a little bit, but it says the word indigenous peoples used for native peoples more generally. Okay, now it says who, I'm not sure what that is, Inuit and Metis. So it says who do not fall under the First Nation category. Status Indian remains a legal designation because of the Indian Act. So the term Indian, regardless, it seems like it's the basic European term for the native indigenous people on this land, and it was given to them by those Europeans that came here, right? So I see that. All right. See if we got comments. Something. Oh, okay. So we got this Islam mode. So let's look at this, y'all. Keep looking. All right. So now we got what the general term Indian and how it was used. Basically, let's look at the legal term of American Indian Moor. I mean law, American Indian law. So an American Indian, it says in the U.S. law, the term Indians refer generally to the indigenous peoples of the North American continent at the time of European colonization. Alaska natives and native Hawaiians refer to peoples who are indigenous to the areas occupied by those names. So that's interesting. But everybody else, for the most part, was termed Indian. You know what I'm saying? Like Choctaw, or all those different tribes are Indian. But these tribes are like native. Oh, okay, these are Eskimo or Native Alaskan or Native Hawaiian. So that's interesting to me right there. But it says that the terms tribe or band designate a group of indigenous people of the same or similar heritage united in a community under one leadership of government and inhabiting a particular territory. Just because Indians have increasingly preferred nation or people, the term tribe has become controversial. So basically, like as the as the native people began to get more, as they went back into the law and started arguing these terms that has been placed on them by Europeans. So they starting to change, like they changed the name Indian to being more like indigenous or native. They changed tribe to nation or people. So they're kind of like taking and creating their own definitions or their own terms for their tribe, for their people, instead of being tribes. Which the reason why I'm saying that is because one of the things that we have to do is, as melanated people, as Moors, things of that nature, that we have to collectively come up with our own terms and names for things so that we can be classified differently, right? That's one of the things I'm seeing. So it's saying, the reason why I'm showing this about the Native Americans, because a lot of controversy has come through. Native Americans don't have any sovereignty. They when Moors talk about it, they're looked as a lower class because the name Indian, right? The name Indian itself is a term that was given to them, and it puts them in a different status. So what I'm trying to see and look at, what I'm studying here is, what is that status that they really in? What status did it put them in based on the law? Okay, so right here it says federal law recognizes a special kind of Indian sovereignty authority. So this right here is saying federal law recognizes a special kind of Indian sovereign authority to govern themselves, subject to an overriding federal authority. Okay, so it's saying right here that they do have a sovereignty authority that can override the United States federal authority. Indian tribes are considered by federal law. So this is where it is. They're considered by federal law to be domestic, dependent nations. They are domestic, dependent nations. Congress enacted this sovereign authority to protect Indian groups from state authority. This sovereign authority extends to Indian tribal courts, which adjudicate matters relating to Indian affairs. The Supreme Court heard a case in 2008 concerning the extent of tribal court jurisdiction. So in Plain Commerce Bank versus Long Family Cattle Company, the U.S. Supreme Court reaffirmed a long-held principle that tribes do not have jurisdiction over non-Indians conducting activity on a non-Indian, even if it's on an Indian reservation, unless the activity threatens the welfare of the tribe. Okay, let me deal on this real quick. So what what are y'all hearing in that, right? What are you hearing in that particular phrase? The fact that they're saying that Native Americans don't have jurisdiction over non-native, even in their own territory. So that is, to me, that's a form of limited sovereignty right there, because they are not able. So that's like saying, if you in the United States, let's say you from Canada and you come in the United States and you commit a crime, you're going to get punished by the United States, right? If you do something in this jurisdiction, they're going to punish you in this jurisdiction. But they're telling the Native American that he doesn't have the right to do that in his own territory. That's that's heavy. I don't know if you got anything to say about that, or you got any Thoughts on that?
I mean, it's interesting point you brought up, for real. I mean, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think my dude, he calling me. Look, can't call. Okay, so um, okay, so let's look at. Let me go. Hold on, let me go back. Let me make sure I'm finished with that. Okay, so with that being said, I wanted to look at when it's talking about understanding Indian treaties in American history and law. Understanding treaties in American history. So, when we're looking at the Native Americans, the first people to come to America were those European nations that came here and conquered. They had a treaty. When they got conquered, they heard that there was a treaty with them, right? So a lot of times these treaties have been broken, but nonetheless, a lot of treaties have been created with the European Americans, with the Native Americans. So it's saying right here in the late 18th and 19th centuries, the peoples of the three fires, okay, collectively known as the Anishinaabe, negotiated a series of treaties with representatives of the United States government. These treaties continue to have force today. So that's interesting. The one thing I want to know to say about sometime about treaties is just because a treaty was broken doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, that it doesn't still have validity. It might have been broken. It needs to be reinforced, but it's still, nonetheless, it still has application. So they're saying right here that these treaties continue to have force today. They affect the right and privileges of both Indians and Euro Americans. So this essay was to speak on the rights and privileges of both Indians and Euro Americans. So I'm not gonna go through it, but we're gonna touch on it a little bit. It says one of the most fundamental differences separating Indians and Euro Americans was in how they thought about land ownership. Right. So for the native land, it was something owned by no one, particularly no person, right? It's like they're saying it's like the air that breathed by Indians or the water in which a canoe floated. The land was simply theirs to use. Now, I'm gonna stop there because that is definitely, we understand that is definitely not the concept of the European. If the European today could, which he does, look, the European got us buying water today. The Europeans' concept of owning things is very much different. So the European will sell us air if they could. They do sell air, but if they could sell it on a big scale, they would. Because they're always about taking ownership of things. So it says it's saying like the air breathed by Indians or the water. Okay, let me go back. It says that these traditional stories illustrates the sense of possession in the book, right? It says in this volume, he relates a story called The Council, a speech made by one of the chiefs. The council had been called to discuss whether or not to sign treaties with the whites. So this right here is a quote. So it says to control and possess the land as the white man wishes does not make sense. Can man possess a gust of the north wind or a measure of flowing water? Can he control a mass of clouds or a herd of moose? No, do not mistake the truth. It is not man who owns the land, it is the land that owns man. And we were replaced on this land. From beginning to end, it nourishes us, quenches our thirst, it shelters us, and we follow the order of its seasons. It gives us freedom to come and go according to its nature and its extent. great freedom when the extent is large, less freedom when it's small. And when we die, we are buried within the land that outlives us all. We belong to the land by birth, by need, and by affection. And no man may presume to own the land. Only the tribe, only the tribe can do that. So that's interesting right there. They're telling us that you can't own the land, and even if you could, it's the people who are originally here, which we're gonna get into that. Who was the original person here? But the original people on the land are the ones that can make that consideration. Okay, so I think that's important for us to understand that it is not their place to say what is ownership. Okay. Uh, Let me get back to the board, see what's going on. Let me see what's going on. Peace, y'all. Peace, peace, sister. Peace, peace to everybody out there. Like I said, please, y'all, like the video, subscribe, and if y'all got questions, please get in the building, ask questions. You know, we'll deal with them. But we get into the Newton Cranny. I got my man on here because we're gonna be dropping the other side of this tale, right? Because we're looking at natives, we're looking at Indians, right? And as Moors, we're saying that these people are not necessarily the original people here. That's the premise of Moors, that the Moors was really here first. That's the premise that we have become accustomed to. But I'm trying to show the clarity of what an Indian is and what the legal part and what they really have, because this is the thing at hand, y'all. When we talking about this, us Moorish brothers and sisters, we say that we're higher than Indian. That Indian is a misnomer name, and that using that misnomer will only get you so much. But my question, and what I'm looking at, is compared to the Moor today, right now in this particular set we're in right now today, what power are we wielding that is greater than what the natives are doing right now? That's the question, right? So this is not a slight against us Moors, but I'm saying this is what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at we're looking at what's their jurisdiction, what's their rights, what's their what they have in law. We're looking at what they're doing, right? So let's keep going. I want to show this real quick, and then let's see if this is it. Let's see if this is it. I think it's this one. All right. So this right here, I'm gonna show y'all this. This right here is Johnson and Graham. This is a court case. Signed. Look, it's back in 1823. Okay, so let's look at this. I want to show this. It says primary holding. It says land transfers from Native American to private individuals are void when a tract of land has been acquired through conquest, right? And the property of most people who live there arise from the conquest. The people who have been conquered have a right to live on the land, but cannot transfer title to the land. Okay? Do y'all hear that? Does that make sense? What are they saying? This is the court case. So this is the Supreme Court, or I think, yeah. They're saying that, okay, y'all got the right to the land, even though we took over the land. Y'all got the right to use the land, but and the right to live on it, but you don't have the right to transfer title. You don't have any power of transfer title, so you don't have ownership of the land. You can't, what they call cede. The Native Americans couldn't cede the land to nobody else. They can only use it. So this is what they're saying. So they say the facts was this action for ejectment was based on a land dispute. After Thomas Johnson, a Supreme Court justice, bought land from the Native Americans right? He says his descendants inherited the land after Johnson's death and leased it to individuals who brought the action against William. The federal government had given McIntosh or a land patent to allegedly the same land, although in reality it appears that the properties were actually separate. Believe that. The parties thus brought this litigation in order to obtain a judgment on priority rights to property more generally. So it says ruling that the Native American tribe did not have the right to convey the land. The federal district court held that Johnson's initial purchase and the chain of title stemming from it were invalid. Do y'all understand what this said? People, they were saying that they're saying that the Native Americans didn't even have the right to sell the land because they had been defeated in conquest and that they don't have any rights to the land to sell. They can use the land, they can hunt their game and do the things that they do allegedly, but the court said they can't sell the land. So the whole purchase is null and void. They don't have a right to the land. They don't have a right to the land. All right. So I'm just do you follow what I'm saying though, brother?
Yeah, man.
I mean,
Wow.
I'm just trying to make sure that it's making sense. So and I'm just showing this is what they're saying. This is what they're saying about the Native Americans. So when Moors is saying these things about why they don't want to be classified as Indian, it's because of the limitation of rights that they've been given through conquest. So let me see. So I got let me see what else I had to get on that real quick. Now another thing is, like I said, the Native Americans did have treaties with Britain, France, Spanish. They had treaties before the United States existed. Right. This was something that me and the brothers discussed. We discussed it one day. We was talking about that. The Native Americans were conquered and conquested long before America got here. America just continued the conquest, and they have more treaties. But there were other treaties before that. So let me see. I'm gonna just show uh, some of the different things that was going on. You got the Proclamation of 1763. It was issued by King George. It was followed by the Treaty of Paris, which formally ended the Seven Years' War and transferred French territory to North America and Great Britain. So, right, like, a lot of these territories was, originally another European country, and then it was transferred to another European country, right? So, uh, so the proclamation forbade all settlements west of a line drawn along the Appalachian Mountains, which was delineated as an Indian reserve. Exclusion from the vast region of Appalachia created discontent between Britain and colonial land speculators and potential settlers. The proclamation and access to Western lands was one of the first significant areas of dispute between the British colonies and what would become a contributing factor to the American Revolution. So, like, I'm just showing you guys, like, this, the treaties and the Native Americans and the issues with the natives go back to before the United States. It goes back to colonial, even pre-colonial. Okay. Let me see what else I had real quick. I think that. I think that's one of, okay, so one more thing. This is the treaty. We were talking about treaties, right? We talk about, as Moors, we talk about the peace and friendship treaties. So the peace and friendship treaties were not just the treaties to for Moors in the time, and like we know, like the Moroccan treaty. There were other peace and friendship treaties going on before that, and they were with those native tribes, right? So, um, what we're looking at is, so it's saying that the peace and friendship treaties were a series of written documents or treaties that Britain signed with being great, the authority of Great Britain between 1725 1779 with various tribes. So all these tribes are native tribes, right? You look at that, right? First Nations, right? First Nation tribe. These are all First Nation tribes that they had treaties with. Now, the thing about it is, even though they're Indian, when we talk about treaties, usually when you give a treaty to somebody, it's through um, what they call like your sovereign. Like a treaty is usually from one sovereign to another, right? Check. So when we're talking about these natives, in a sense, these natives do have some sense of sovereignty that they do recognize, as Europeans do recognize that. This is why they're giving them treaties. Because if they didn't see that, they would just go in there and do what they do. But they did create these treaties to show some type of acknowledgement of being a nation or some kind of uh, political entity. You see, even today, you know, the Americans do give acknowledgement to these tribes or nations now, and these nations are recognized by the United States as separate, right? With certain limited sovereignty jurisdiction, right? Which that's the key and the catch. So I wanted to look at those things. Now, hey, brother, you got anything to interject? Uh, Anything that you got to add to that at this moment?
Uh, Not nothing to add on.
Okay, I'm just saying. So, um, what I wanted to do is, um, I think that was all on that aspect of it. It was there was one more thing that I did want to show. I'm trying to remember where it was. It's not. Oh, here it go. Okay, so now, so what I wanted to do is, I wanted to look at the term of Moor being related to Native Americans, because as Moors, Hakeem Bey uh, and other Moors, Brother Abdullah Bey, we've talked on these things dealing with uh, the Moors being the original people ownership of the land. So where does that come from? Like, where would even that thought come from? So I'm going to show a couple of things, and then we can get into the other side of it. Um, so it was this article that I ran across, and it's talked about the Delaware Moors. And I wanted to talk about the Delaware Moors. I've been familiar with it. I believe that Hakeem, I seen this on Hakeem Bey when he talked about the Moors. So right here is a little story, right? Because it's going to describe some things. So this is going to be like the merger from like the term Indian to Moor. So this story, it's a story. So it say, as a teenager, when I first heard someone use the term Moor to refer to a member of the Sussex County multiracial community, which claims and celebrates Native American ancestry. So it said Moor. I asked, confused, thinking of North Africa. It says, what that mean? It says the response was quipped with like a punchline, more inward than anything. So it says, I didn't know at the time, but C.A. Uh, Westlanger, Westlogger had mentioned a similar tongue-in-cheek explanation to an old label in his book, Delaware Forgotten Folk, the story of the Moors and Nanticos. Published in 1943 and during the era of segregation, such a remark was not only a crude joke, but relegated the target to the second class colored community since before the Civil War. So it says the Delawareans who claimed Indian ancestry had been accused by both whites and blacks of being nothing more than blacks seeking special treatment. Okay. Now the reason why I say this is because this is where me and the brother can get our discussion going, because one of the things is we talk about how blacks say, "Oh, I'm from America. I've never been to Africa. I'm not from Africa. I'm from here. I'm from the Americas. My ancestors are from the Americas." Right. So right here, this is like I said, this is back in the day. So this is before this whole movement, right? It's saying that they believe that Indian ancestry had been accused by both white and black of being nothing more than blacks seeking special treatment. But the local term Moor is an ethnic label, doesn't seem to have originated as a racial slur, because it didn't. It says, in fact, that so-called Delaware Moors identified themselves as Moors as early as the 19th century, if not earlier. But what's the story behind the name? So, the history of Delaware, published in 1888, offers a following description of a group in question in Sussex County. It says, in the hundreds of Indian River, Lewes, and what's that, Rehoboth and Dagsboro are a numerous class of colored people, commonly known as yellow men, and by many believed to be descendants of the Indians, which formerly inhabited this country. Others regard them as mulattoes, and still others claim that they are of Moorish descent, from the fact that so many of them bear the name of Sockum. That term has also been applied to the entire class of people of their genealogy. Judge P. Fisher states or says, about 150 years ago, a cargo of slaves from the Congo River was landed at Lewes and sold to purchasers at that place. Among them was a tall, fine-looking young man, about 5 and 20 years. This man was named whatever, whatever, and was remarkable for his manly uh, pro- proportions and regular features. Being more Caucasian than African, it says Requa was purchased by a young Irish widow having red hair, blue eyes, and fair complexion. She afterwards married him. At that time, the Nanaco Indians were still quite numerous at at and near Indian River. The offspring of the Irish wife and them were not recognized in white society, and they were not associated with Negroes, and did not associate and intermarry with Indians. This statement was made on the oath of Lydia Clark at Georgetown in 1856 in a trial on a case of the state against Levin Sockham for selling, contrary to law, powder and shot to one Isaiah Hardman or whatever, right? A free mulatto. The question upon which the case turned was whether Harmon really was a free mulatto, and the genealogy of his race of people was traced to Lydia Clark, then about 87 years of age. who was of the same race of people. The court was so well convinced of the truth of Lydia's testimony that Sachem was convicted of a charge preferred against him. This race of people are noted as peaceable, law-abiding citizens, good farmers. Listen to this, and are known as Moors, but without any foundation. Okay, so I'm gonna show this right here, and then we can kind of get into this, man, because this is kind of where we're going. So it's in the Delaware Moors. The curious found. So they got this right. Talking about there has been much speculation about the so-called Moors living in Kent and Sussex County. Dale, these people are usually swarthy. You know what swarthy mean, right? Black hair and black eyed. Though sometimes of a fair complexion. They are mostly farmers. They have their own school district. Y'all hear this? They had their own school district from the general public school system, and they associated neither with whites nor with blacks. One theory has been that they are of the Moorish race and that their ancestors were Spanish Moors wrecked on a coast more than a century ago. Another tradition represents them as descendants of the Nanticoke Indians. Okay, so I thought this was interesting, and this would tie us together with the Moors versus the Indians, right? Let me see. So, all right. So, with that being said, brother, what is your thoughts on that, man? So, what are your thoughts?
But on this particular instance,
Yeah, on this instance. So, what are your thoughts about this particular story?
I mean, now I have heard about the Delaware Moors. I first heard about it from you. I will say it's definitely not my area of expertise. From what I read about the Delaware Moors, is basically very similar to what you said. That these people are considered indigenous people here. That they did have some peculiar, if you will, features that may have set them apart from other indigenous people in that some people believe that they may be actually descendant of Moors from Africa, at least from I don't know what I'm picking up from it, but like I said, I don't know.
Right. So, my thing is this: we talked earlier because we talked about that melanated people, so-called black people, now more than ever are claiming to be descendants of Americans and not um, black. They're not African. They have no claim to African. And so right here, I feel like this story or this clip is showing how a somewhat of an explanation early, like this is like 100 and something years ago that they're showing glimpse of how people are getting knowledge about Moors being in America and being part of Native American,
Mhm.
right? Now, it's not saying that they were here forever or they was here. They're really speaking about them being integrated with these Nanticoke Native Americans, right? They're showing that they have a connection. That these people who are considered Native Americans are really Moors. So were these Moors here all the time? Is the misnomer is the Indian being misnomered as an Indian? instead of being called a Moor? Is is that something that could be possible
That's
in
me.
your eyes? Yeah, I mean, just in general, like, do you think like that's like pliable, or is it no real proof for that? Like,
I will say this: I've heard a lot of different takes on the Moorish indigenous connection. I hear a lot of people were saying that America was actually part of the Moorish Empire. I've heard other stuff like they will be considered Moorish if you want to call them that. Like it was dark skinned indigenous people that could be referred to as Moors. Me personally, man, if we talking about history and we talking about Islamic Spain and Northern Africa, if we talking about, oh yeah, and also West Africa, if we talking about those people that are considered to be Moors, was they here like before any of the Europeans even thought about coming here? I would have to say no. I would have to say I haven't seen no evidence for it. It's an interesting thought. It would be interesting if it did happen, but
okay, so to be clear, you said say that again. You're saying that the were the Moors here? You were talking about the Moors, right?
yeah, I mean, because I've heard people say a lot of different things, like the Moors was here thousands of years. I even recently heard somebody even say I don't thousands, if not longer than that. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, but you're right though. I mean, like they'll say that they've been here for thousands of years, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
based on what they're saying, they say that the American Indians were nomadic hunters. They say that they were uh, probably the last glacial period. So they're saying roughly 30,000, 12,000 years ago, they started coming through. So my question is, were those people that were coming through the Bering Strait, were those the people that we're talking about as, were those the Moors coming through there? I mean, because take like, and I say that look though, typically the term Moor is not that old. I mean, necessarily like 30,000 years ago. I'm not thinking there was something called a Moor, but what I'm saying is where they're dark skinned people, like I would say, like people from Australia, like those Aborigines, were those type of people coming through there 20, 30,000 years ago, or were the Mongoloid people coming through there that look more Asiatic? And when I mean Asiatic, I mean Asian, like more like what we consider as Chinese or those type of people. Were those people coming through there 30,000 years ago? Or was that when the Moors or the dark skinned melanated people came through? That's just my thought. So go ahead. Go ahead and say something, man.
Now maybe on that, and then it get I will say it gets kind of, and I'm happy you clarified that because it gets kind of confusing. When we thought more in there because automatically we think in North Africa, Spain, all that, West Africa. Now to answer your question, I can get with that. I can get with that. That if you want to use that term to describe dark skin, indigenous, let's say even blackish or looking people that came over here, I can get with that. I can get with that.
Okay. Okay. And I got you. So check D. So let's look at this because we talking about dark skinned people coming over here through the Bering Strait. Now check this. Could that been there? They said roughly 30,000 years ago. That's a rough estimate. They don't really know, right? But so what does this say though? This right here is about the Australian Aboriginal people. They are speaking and saying, let's look at what they say. Let's look at what they say. Let me get here real quick. It says, trying to get to where the so prehistory. It is generally held that Australian Aboriginal people came from Asia. Hey, why did they do that? Why did it jump like that? Let me go back. I'm trying to get back. Okay. It said that they came from Asia, Southeast Asia, now Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, all those areas. If you go today, those areas are very dark skinned. They'll call some of those Philippines Moors, right to this day, right? But they say that those people arrived 45 to 50,000 years ago, right? However, some scientists have claimed that the early humans arrived considerably sooner, perhaps as early as 65 to 80,000 years ago. That conclusion is consistent with the argument made by some scholars that the migration of anatomically modern humans out of Africa and adjacent areas. Okay, so with that being said, I don't know if you've seen any connection to that with
Mm,
me saying that.
I mean, I think I get what you're saying. So you're saying like these people set out a lot sooner than the people in the Bering Strait, right?
Yeah, I'm saying they're saying probably like 80,000 years ago versus people coming through the Bering Strait 30,000 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
that's like what 50,000 year difference, which
Right.
that's a lot. That's astronomical in our to us. Um, but they said it came from Asia, Southeast Asia. So my thing is, if they did come through the Bering Strait, I mean, I could see that those people didn't just go down south; they would have also migrated the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so my thing is this: if the people who we talk about, Native Americans, came roughly 30,000 years ago, to me, they would seem to have a darker hue anyway, regardless. But
Right.
they're saying that they're mongoloid. Um, they have or they resemble mongoloids. But what was a what was an Asian 30, 40,000 years ago? What did an Asian look like 30, 40,000 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
That's my question because that's still, to me, that's still a long time.
Right.
If we just look at 5,000 years of history, that's nothing compared to 30,000 years ago. So, what did the Asians look like 30,000 years ago? Could they have been dark skinned, melanated people?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's my thought. So, I mean, like, what, I know we talked about other issues that were going on with that. What are the other issues that we are looking at?
I mean, because this idea, we was talking about it, you saying it's not something that's brand new. People been talking about this at least for a few decades, if not longer. If not longer, let's put it that way. Uh and me and you, we talked about this. I think it's a lot more research that need to be done if we talking about as far as, well, wait a minute, am I jumping the gun? Because I think I might be going too far. I think we may not be there yet.
No, go ahead. What you saying?
So I mean, I think it's a lot of research that need to be done as far as connecting us when we talking about me and you to these people, and a lot of folks are welcoming the idea that we didn't come from Africa at all, and that all of us, we was already here the whole time, and the white man he just did a fabulous job of hiding it from us, and that we know now. Based on what? I don't know. A lot of people will tell me, well, well, my grandma, she said that we was Cherokee. Um, a lot of the stuff that I be hearing when I ask a lot of people about why they believe this, they kind of going off of family stories. And I think in this context, when we talking about legal stuff, how crucial is it to have solid, undeniable proof to back up this claim? And honestly, I mean, I told you this earlier. I think you have done a way better job of warming me up to this idea than anybody else that I talk to. When you talk about, the Australians and Southeast Asia, and then people, that makes a lot more sense than what I be hearing a lot of folks online talking about we came from Atlantis and we spread across the the continent, all types of crazy stuff, man. Um, but I do think, coming back to the main point, I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done on this. And at this point, a lot of folks are acting as if these are facts, when really, if anything, at best, is these are hypotheses. These are hypothesis. I don't even know another word to describe it. It's a theory, or maybe a working theory at best. I don't know.
Okay. So I'm gonna let you get in on this. You saying that so with your opinion, you haven't really seen any evidence that links dark me and you to Native American, to indigenous culture.
Well, I can't sit up here and say that we not linked to indigenous people. I mean, it's fairly well accepted that what do you want to call it? Moorish Americans, Black Americans, African Americans, whatever you want to call it, it's fairly well accepted that we do, at least a fraction of us, have a lineage, a genetic lineage to the indigenous people here. That's not even being disputed. I think it's the level that we talking about when folks get to the point where they saying, no, we wasn't even from Africa. We was here the whole time. The white, they just reclassified us and multiplier and this and this and that. And that's where my issue is, when folks
Okay.
literally.
I got you. So like one of the things that people are saying is that there was no way that the Europeans could have brought that many Africans over to America.
I
That's
mean,
one of I think that's one of the things they're saying, right?
but what is that based on? Is that just their own guess? I mean, you got historians who are a lot more qualified than them to make a verdict on that. And historians have spoken, not just one person, but many well-trained historians, anthropologists, artists who agree with that. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's one of my pet peeves. I mean, our folks literally came here on the boat, suffered, and went through all that, and now we talking about that didn't even happen to them. It ain't even happen to them. It was just a lie. It was a lie.
I got you. I got you. So So our issue. I see the issue. Like one thing too is that they're saying that we didn't come over here, but I mean that we were already here. There was no connection. They don't even want to connect it to the the people who migrated over here. Like a lot of them are just saying, like, look, we were already here. Like we were here a million years ago. And I got problems with that too, because it's like, well, genetically, like, do we just disqualify the different species of man? Like modern man, like is modern man like a misnomer or something? You know what I'm saying?
Huh. I said, you said millions of years. Was even
Yeah,
human beings around millions of years?
I mean, humans have been around for millions, like the human species, but not. But they're saying not Homo erectus. I mean, or Homo sapien. Like Homo sapien wasn't around allegedly a million, 2 million years ago. Allegedly, Homo sapien is roughly 40,000 years old.
Okay.
So, you know, now I did so okay, another thing looking at too, I forgot what the Native American and the connection with them would be Seminoles. Like if you look at this Seminole, they pretty dark. They look like they could be something. They don't look like your typical, you know.
And let me say something too, though, because
Yeah.
I've seen dark Mexicans. You know what I'm saying? And we can be sitting up there like, oh well, they just got a tan. But I done seen some Mexicans, some dark Mexicans. They be quite swarthy. They, they. I'm just putting it out there. But anyway,
I
anyway.
mean, that's true. That's true though, because I mean, what is Mexican? What is a Mexican? A Mexican supposed to be like a mix between an indigenous, what they call an Indian, and a Spaniard. So that's what Mexicans really is. So if they're that dark with the mixture of a Spaniard, then what would you imagine they looked like before they was mixed?
Mm. And
But
I
the question is, do
also put
those
that
are
out
those
there.
people us?
Fair is
Huh?
that I'm putting this out there just to be fair. A lot of the Mexicans, they do got a little bit of DNA from Africa. So if they a little dark skinned, I mean, it could be because they had a grandma, great grandma from Senegal or something. But anyway,
Okay. I mean, I hear you. That's what I'm saying. This is why we, having this discussion because a lot of people are necessarily not. They're on one side or the other. They're like, nah, or and to keep it real, a lot of people that I know are starting to look at indigenous side. I had a brother that's been friends with me, and he's been a very African centered guy for years. But he's talking about how there's something to um, being native to America. My thing is this, like like looking at this right here, looking at this particular picture of this Seminole, the fact that a lot of Africans, when they came here and escaped or got free, they went to Seminole or they went to different places. There is a mix of African and indigenous people coming together,
mhm.
right? So when we see in these phenotypes, it's really because it's a mix. But what the people are trying to say is, oh, like look at that. We've been here. We've been here. They're they're taking away our rights to the land. They're trying to, and I'm not against that. I mean, the European, he took over America. He took the land. He made it the United States, and he either wiped you out, or he declassified you, or classified you as something else in order to get you off the land, to get you off your land.
Hey,
So a lot of people. Go ahead. Go ahead.
we got to be careful with this lookerism type stuff, like especially in this context when we talk about legal stuff, right? Like a woman doesn't go to court for child support and tell the judge, well, the baby looked like him, the baby got his skin complexion, the baby got his hair. I mean,
Right. Right. It's all done by DNA. So it's a scientific aspect, which is what, with your expertise on that, or with your experience on that, um, you know, how, because people, like we've talked about this before. People want to disclaim um, the DNA testing. They want to like say it doesn't work, or it's not, accurate. It's a scam. It's not, these type of things. But it's used in law. Like they use DNA testing in law. Now, somebody did tell me like, well, there's a difference between a DNA test for, determining your child, if it's yours or not, versus testing DNA from different groups. What you call haploid?
well, let me talk about the
Break it
DNA.
in.
I'm gonna try
Yeah.
to break it down real quick. So the DNA testing companies, right? What they do is, as far as ethnicity, what they do is they gather samples from different people who have lived in different land areas for a given amount of time, and they compare it to your DNA, right? So I took a DNA test, somebody somewhere else took a DNA test in, let's say, Nigeria. They compared my DNA to someone in Nigeria and said, huh, your DNA looks like someone from Nigeria. It's not saying necessarily that I'm Nigerian. It's saying that my DNA is very similar, or I share DNA with people from Nigeria or wherever. On another side, they also give you DNA matches. So even if we don't believe in the ethnicity part of it, which is okay, you still get DNA matches. They still will link you to different people who you share DNA with. And I did a test. I share DNA. Like some of my cousins, it's from Nigeria. I got cousins from, not a lot of them, maybe, out of the thousands of people I probably had a match with, maybe 2 or 3 from Africa. I mean, I don't think this, but that's kind of how the DNA works, kind of in a nutshell. As far as the haplogroups, if you take, depending on the type of test you take, it will give you a haplogroup. Haplogroup is essentially your maternal or your paternal lineage. It will link you back to, I want to say, a certain group of people, but I don't want to say that. But essentially, your haplogroup links you to certain people. Your haplogroup can trace you back generations and generations. In this context that we're talking about, matter of fact, I can even share something real quick.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah. When they pop up, I can share it.
Okay. Where is it?
So I see brother Master J720 in the building. When you say no difference, I'm not sure exactly where, because we was talking. We might have switched subjects, but
Okay.
what are you? Could you say more about that, Master J? All right.
Okay. Do you see it at all?
Yep, it's up.
Okay. So now this is actual research, right? This is scientific research. They took a sample of different Black, Moorish American, melanated people, right? and they looked at what their maternal lineage is, right? Anybody who's taking a look at this, who know anything about haplogroups, which I suggest everyone should, they found overwhelmingly that it says right here, overall, the mtDNA diversity observed in our study is concordant with those published for African American and African populations. Specifically, the most commonly observed haplogroup found in our study were L2 and L1B. These are African haplogroups, meaning that I took one of the tests. Actually, what's this? The African Ancestry DNA test, right? They claim, now I will say this: the DNA test, unless you kind of got a little bit of no, you may be kind of misled by them. Like the African Ancestry DNA, they claim to be able to tell you your tribe, which is not true. They can tell you what tribes your relatives are, right? Your living relatives. Because I did a test and it linked me to the Yoruba people, but it don't mean my ancestors were Yoruba. They could have been kidnapped by Yoruba and blended in with them. It don't necessarily mean that they are Yoruba, but yeah, the haplogroups. And if you look at go on YouTube, folks like YouTube, go on YouTube and look up African Ancestry DNA tests. And what you will find is that when people are taking these tests, it's linking them to people in Africa. I have not seen any DNA, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't found overwhelmingly a lot of DNA tests that are saying that we was Native American or that we some type of mystery lost tribe or something like that was already here. It's linking us to Africa, or even more so towards Europeans. That's one of the funny things about we more related to the Europeans than Native Americans, and that's just based on scientific findings. It's not just something I'm just pulling up out of a hat or something like that.
You say I don't know, bro. Hey, that's a lot right there, man. That's a lot. That's a lot for me to digest. I'm gonna take a quick ad break, right, and then we'll be back in like 20 seconds.
Power in the melanin, she glows. Unified like Malcolm when we close. Pushing through the struggle, yeah, we chose. Solid as a rock, I love it grows. Speaking wisdom just like Dr. Umar knows. Dripping culture in our stance, it shows. On the front lines where that passion roars. Building empires, Kevin Samuels goals. Sitting at the table, he proposed. Melanated love, in America it flows.
All right. So we back in the building, man. I had to take a break on that one, man. I had to think about what you just said, man. You linking us back to the so-called white man. I don't know, man. I ain't feel. But we know we got a lot. We know we got a lot of slave. There was a lot of things going on in slavery and whatnot.
Because look, I think who said this? Henry Gates. I think Henry Gates said this. He said that a lot of our grandmothers, grandfathers, or whatever, would claim Native ancestry. He said they were actually kind of covering up that European. That you see grandma got that good hair. She must have been Cherokee or something like that. According to what Henry Gates was saying, he was saying that a lot of times people was using that to cover up what actually happened, and that a lot of these people were actually mixed with European. And of course, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but we get the point.
Most definitely. So I see King in the building. King Bay in the building. And me and King just talked about this earlier. Being that they were saying that the word slave goes back to a European term, being Slavic, right? So, um, let me see. Let's go to this. Let's see if I can give you a look at this.
And I'm gonna have you
So,
look this up. So when you get into this, after you get into this, could you talk about like the legal definition of Indian or indigenous?
okay, indigenous. Now, we did kind of look at the term in Indian through the legal, but it was legally. But we can look at indigenous as well, right? So, right here is just saying that the word arrives around 1300. It has a C in it, so they called it slave, esclave, person who is chattel or property of another. From Old French, 13th century, directly from the medieval Latin, most of the stuff, sclavis, slave, originally Slav, which is what me and King was talking about. So it says see Slav. So used in this secondary sense because many Slavs sold into slavery by conquering peoples. So it says in old written history, the Slavs can be shortly summarized as slave hunts and enthrallment of entire people. The Slav was the most prized of human goods. Okay? The most prized of human goods. So that's interesting. I'm gonna click on Slav. Slav, one of the people who inhabited Eastern Europe. So this term was really used for Eastern Europeans, which if you learn in school, you learn that back in history class. It comes from 14th century Slav, medieval Latin, well, again, right? Byzantine, Greek, Sklavos.
Hey man, I'll
So
say, man, you got to be careful, man, because some folks they'll look at that and be like, "Oh, well, we was misclassified as Europeans, man. We wasn't slaves. Like, don't even know. They're fine. Because folks will take some shit in there and run with it.
right. Um, that term does now. Hey, now, so now Indian or Indiana. Well, I think you mean Indian. Indian means British subject. Now, I'm gonna tell you, when I looked that up, it does not mean that it's a British subject. I'm not. Please send me the case to show that because that is not what comes up when we deal with that. That's not the term. Like we said right here, it's saying in U.S. law. Remember when we read this in U.S. law, Indians generally refer to indigenous people of the North Continent, American continent, at the time of European colonization. We know that the term was given to them by Christopher Columbus. Now there was something else that I read. Hold on, there was something else that I did want to look at. I'm trying to see, did I pull it up? I can't remember. I'm kind of salty. Did I not pull? Did I not look at it? Let me see. I'm not sure I got it. But there was something about Christopher Columbus. What they were saying back in those days that anything east of Europe was considered India. So they was like, when they got there, they was like, oh, these are they. I don't know if they thought they was actually Indian, like from India, but they were saying to them that they was in the region of what they call India, and they was calling them Indians. So Christopher Columbus and them were the first ones to, coin that term to those people. You know, I'm looking for it. Nah, you got to show King. I don't know what the Treaty of Peace. Okay, the Peace and Treaty of Great Britain. if that's the one that they used it, then I'll look at it. But we know that um, the term Indian doesn't give them the true title because we saw how they have only limited sovereignty when they were dealing with stuff. Let me see. It says, I'm gonna put it in here. The peace treaty with Great Britain. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look at it. Let me see. I thought I pulled it up. Can't find it. Where is it? Where did it go? I can't find it. I'm gonna look. Okay, I'm gonna get back to that in a minute. The other question was, what was the legal term for indigenous?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think you kind of explained it with them being synonyms, but I mean, is there a difference?
I mean, like I think like the way we prefer indigenous is supposed to be different than Indian, but like let's say according to the law, let's look at what 25 USC say. Let me look at this. It says in this chapter, the term Native American means Indian, Native Hawaiian, or Native American specific islander. The term America has the meaning given to it such under term. Let's look at this. Right, member of Indian tribe, any tribe banned since 1940, any tribe band recognized by the state in which the tribe or band resides, descendant of the first or second degree of an individual described in subparagraph A. A being, let's see, Indian tribe. So, I mean, the way it looks by the state, they look at Indian and indigenous pretty much as synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're looking at. I mean, like when you put it in, it's sticking you back to what we read before. So I mean, you kind of right. It take you back to this. Indigenous meaning indigenous people is supposed to be Indian. So I don't know. Like so, people that are indigenous that think they're not necessarily under Indian, they're pretty much still being referred to as Indian. But like what we saying, the term Moor doesn't is a different term. Like it has a different connotation to it. I think what King is saying too is that uh, based on like we had a discussion the other day, and they were saying that uh, the term Indian was meant that it was a British that you were a British subject. That's what was being said. So uh, that's what made me even want to look around and see what that where that come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to looking around, and basically what it led me to is let me see something. It led me to a case where Indian people from India were British subjects.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I went to it, it kept leading me back to India, not to actual what they call Native Americans today.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Now, so I don't I mean I'm not sure if he got the case. I mean, like if he could sit, I would post it up so we can look at it because that's my main thing. Is like I need to see where that was being made. That case that where that case was being made. So I like I said, when I looked, I didn't see it, but to look at the whole Treaty of Peace. I mean, the Treaty of Paris. I think when you put in the treaty with Great Britain, the Treaty of Peace with Great Britain, it takes you back to the Treaty of Paris, but not the Treaty of Paris of 1783, but the one before that. It takes you back to another treaty. So I mean, the Treaty of Paris of 1783. That's what it takes me to. When I put it in, it takes me back to the Treaty of Paris. So I don't know. Like that's what I say. Like he gonna have to show prove to me where it is. You see what I'm saying? But nonetheless, what we're looking at is where do the Native Americans, are we the Native Americans? Are we the indigenous people that they're talking about today? Or are we a mix of Africans that had came over here at some point and mixed with the indigenous people that are here? Does that make us indigenous?
I
See what I'm saying?
That right there, that's a question within itself. But I mean, like I was saying, man, a lot of people getting to the point where they don't even want to claim Africa no more. Like, and we were talking about this earlier, how it's like this big, don't want to use the word, but it's the only word I can think of, big conspiracy to like just hide this identity from us. Like you got not only historians over the past 100 years, but historians today, anthropologists, geneticists, the DNA companies, everybody. It's a big cahoot of people that's trying to hide this identity from us. For what reason? I don't know. Some people say it's land reparations, which we ain't getting anyway at least for now. We still ain't got reparations for what we know what has happened to us. My thing is, if they was gonna do all that, why they ain't just lie and say that the Europeans was the first ones here? The natives, they weren't even from here. They was from Canada or somewhere, from Mexico. They were never here. And that we got over here. We just came over here. We voluntarily just came over here. If they have the power to manipulate and just hide history on that level, and they got this big caucus of multiple professionals, they've all come together and decided that we gonna hide this from black people. Like, I mean, dang, is we that special? Do they really got to do all that for us? I don't know. Some people will say yeah. Some people say yeah.
I mean, I think that the fact that if this is not really their land and that they're hiding the intent of the land, they're hiding the true possessors of this land, that is going to benefit them. That's going to allow them to maintain the land. Okay. Now, I had a sister had a question in the building. She was saying, "Are we indigenous? Are we Aboriginal? Are we Moors? Are we Indians?" If someone asks us, "What are we?" What do we say? Well, we don't. We're looking at indigenous. Indigenous is maybe what we're saying. Hey, I'm an indigenous to the land, but is that the title that you want to use? No. Aboriginal. That necessarily, when we talk about Aboriginals, that seems to be those people that live in Australia. For us here, if I call myself a Moor, that's going to distinguish myself outside of those categories. Because the Moors, under the Moors, the United States government, to my knowledge, doesn't have jurisdiction over Moors. The jurisdiction of Moors come from the Empire of Morocco. So we're not necessarily under any of the U.S. or British or European subjects. Being a Moor is not a subject of any of the European nations. Being a Moor, you would be a subject of the Empire of Morocco. Okay, that's the best that I can uh, define it. You know, so the thing is, though, what we're saying is, are the indigenous people, are they really Moors? Because they're saying that, they're saying like King, and they're saying that being an Indian is considered a subject of Morocco. I mean, a subject of Great Britain. It is not a full sovereign term. They don't have full sovereign powers. Um, and so they can be controlled. They are a conquered people with that name. You see what I'm saying? So King saying this is a word that we can use. Now I'm saying still, if we're going to say anything about it, I'm still, as a title of a name, I would still use a Moor. But like we said, autochthonous is the title you would say instead of saying that you're indigenous. Okay, so we can look up. We can look that up and see, and we can put that up here and see what it says. Okay, so let's look up the title. But now it's funny because it says autochthonous of an inhabitant of a place, indigenous, right, rather than descendant from migrants or colonists, right? So you don't come, you're part of that land, indigenous to that land. So that's what I'm saying. So when we say, they say, are you indigenous? Well, I'm indigenous to the land. I don't want to use that title as say I'm indigenous. I'm indigenous. I'm indigenous to the land. I'm a Moor. Or like King say, autochthonous. Okay. So, you know, that's what they do. But at the same time, with that being said, are we truly uh, are we truly the people that were here from the beginning? That's the question. I think that people like the that's I think that's where the issue is with a lot of people. Our confusion sometimes is how long we've been here. Are we the true possessors of the land? Are we the true possessors of this land? I would say that we do have a claim to make on the land if we have connections to the native people. Like whether we got it through being here or integrating with them when we got here. You see what I'm saying? Well, this is the thing I'm saying though. This is what we're saying. This is what we saying, King. We were here first, but who was here first? Was it us, like me and you, like us, or was it a group of dark skinned people? So my question is that the same thing that we would say to Australia? Oh well, we've been here first too. We're the first to come to Australia. Are we the first to come to Australia? Is that meaning us? Are we the same genetic as the Australian?
And I'm happy you
You see
bring up
what I'm
that
saying?
point too, though, because you know what, that's almost problematic to a certain extent. Because when you're talking about the early indigenous people, like the first people who was here, okay, I can get with that. Maybe they was quote unquote black. Maybe they even look kind of like me and you. You know what I'm saying? But are we closely related to them? Like, is they our ancestors? You know what I'm saying? Because if you want to get into that, I mean, black people I don't know. I mean, according to what I've been finding, black people was everywhere. You know, they was in Europe, they was in China, they was all over Asia and India and all over the place. But can I go to Great Britain and be like, look, black people was here first. I'm indigenous here. This is my land. Y'all need to I need to cough up some of them land titles. You know, something to think
That's
about.
that's what they're saying. What my thing is, like, so I mean, so I don't know, King, if he's saying yes to Australians, they're saying like, if he's saying yes to, are we Australian people? I mean, what I think that it is that we have a grand look, like because of our condition here in North America, we tend to gravitate to anybody that's dark skinned and say that they're us. We have a relation to them though, in the sense that they, because we all look alike, that we have much of the same type of oppression against us because of the skin color that we have. You see what I'm saying? To me, that is some of the issue, is that we look at phenotype, we say, okay, he's dark just like I am. I come from somewhere in North Africa, and then I go to Australia, and I'm gonna say, okay, somebody from South Africa is the same as the person in Australia, the Aboriginal, when they don't, just because they dark and they have similar features in, but they do they have a direct relationship? That to me is the question. Do they have a direct relationship, or am I to assume like the European and just group everybody into one category?
Mm.
Like the European would say, "Oh, everybody's Indians. Y'all all look alike. Y'all are Indians." When they say, "No, I'm this tribe. I'm this tribe. We're not the same. We don't have the same history. We don't have the same place we come from. We didn't come through at the same time. We didn't even come through the Bering Strait at the same time. Uh, we got different looks about us, but we would be categorized as all as one." And a lot of that comes from Pan Africanism, because as Pan Africanists, we look at, we are all the same. We're all being oppressed around the world, right? You got Pan Africans, like we could say like Dr. Umar. He could be like, well, there's Africans all across the planet, but do those Africans look, or wherever you're from, do the indigenous people look at us as we're the same?
Mm.
Does, you know what I'm saying? And like, are we the same? Because we come from two different time frames. It's like, oh man, what was that? Hold on. It was something that I showed you that we was talking about, right? What was it? The Dravidians, or the, what was it? I
Yeah.
gotta look it up, man. That
Uh
was something I want. Mm-hmm.
Indians and no, what was the Javosians or something like that? The,
Yeah, it was something like that. I'm about to go look. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. Let's see if I can find that article.
okay. Well, while you looking at that,
Uh,
I mean, I'm
Go
happy you
ahead.
brought up that last point because a lot of this stuff is kind of going back to Afrocentrism. And as much as I feel like we need Afrocentrism, it's kind of become like it's kind of messing some things up. Let's just put it that way, because it opens room for bias. You know what I'm saying? Like this lookerism, like just because someone has dark skin, maybe even they got woolly hair, that them is my people. And while on one end, you know, you might feel that way, like, oh, that's my brother, you know what I'm saying? But it don't really work like that. Maybe it work like maybe that's how we think here, but when we think outside of the United States, it's a very different story of how people think and you know relate to each other.
Very much so. Very much so. Right. I think it was New Guinea.
New Guinea, yeah, Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can pull that up, and I wanted to look at it.
Okay. Well, let me rattle on a bit more. What some of the other stuff? I also wanted to say, man, like a lot of us who are talking about this Native American stuff really gotta do their homework. Like for real, not even only just generally, but a lot of folks don't have a basic understanding of Native American history. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we be sitting up here talking about these people and claiming that we are actually them, but folks don't even be having a general understanding of Native American history. Like, if we claiming that we are really them, we need to be experts on them. And it's really kind of sad for me personally because it's like right now when we got all this information available about Africa and the history of Africa, and we can finally learn more about the tribes that we most likely come from. We ain't even on that. We stuck on Walter Plecker, and if we was already here,
Right. Right. So I wanted to look at this real quick. Like it says, we're talking about Papua New Guinea, right? It says modern humans arrived in New Guinea from Africa, they say, roughly 50,000 years ago. There they interbred with the Denevicans, okay, who had been living in Asia for tens of thousands of years. Okay. As a result of this ancient interbreeding. So my thing is this, like the thing about it is there were different, what's the word I'm looking for? There was different species of man that were in the world at around 50,000 years ago. So my thing is like a lot of times was certain species interbreeding with like they're it wouldn't be necessarily the same. You have different species that were interbreeding with other species. So you got the Africans, the modern day man, interbreeding with Cro-Magnon man, interbreeding with Neanderthal, interbreeding with the Denisovans, interbreeding with all these different species of man. So it would cause slightly different.
oh yeah,
Okay.
and I agree with that because them people, as much as I will say they look like us, they do look kind of different. You know what I'm saying? Like they forehead maybe a little bit too wide or something like that. But I feel you though. I feel you.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, when we talking about we the same, it's like, okay, we might have entered like from what I'm saying, Africans leaving out of Africa started to breed as Homo sapiens started to breed with other species of man. Now, brother, I understand everything about principles of law, but we're talking more about science and history right now. Like, I mean, I can't like the principles of law, we can talk about that too, but we gotta talk about uh the science of it. Like the science applies as well, not just the law per se. So, like if we discuss this next week, I'm pretty sure it's going to be about law and we can deal with law. But, like my brother on here, we also dealing with like the DNA. We're dealing with other aspects that give us uh, a different glimpse on, I guess, like what's going on. You see what I'm saying? So we're looking at certain aspects of history and science and the DNA, so we can look at these things, you know what I'm saying, together and get a bigger picture of it. Do you
And let
understand
me
what I'm saying?
say this because as someone who, and I'm not claiming that I'm expert or anything like that, but just as someone who has had historical training, right? When we talking about history, right, and writing history and building history, one of the foundation of history, of creating history and writing history are primary sources, right? Primary sources. And we was talking about this earlier. When we look for primary sources, when we talking about autobiographies, we talking about old newspapers, memoirs, et cetera, right? We can undoubtedly find autobiographies, court documents, all types of stuff of people who were here, who were brought here from Africa, right? And we can show and prove that undeniably. So all the people that's talking about we didn't come from Africa, whatever, okay? But one thing, and I challenge people to really look this up and really do real research. Please find me some autobiography, a memoir of somebody who was already here, was a black person or whatever you want to call it, was enslaved and reclassified, and can give a testimony that this happened to not just them, but millions of people. I challenge people to find that. If people can show me that, I will be convinced. Or it don't even have to be one of the enslaved people. It can be a white person. It could be one of the Native Americans. It could be anybody. But let it be at least a primary source.
Exactly. So yeah, brother says history, science, and law go together. I mean, you're right. They do go together, you know. But when we talk about them, we will talk about them. We'll talk about history. We'll talk about law. We'll talk about science. We'll talk about these different aspects at different times. So we talked about law, or we talk about law. We'll discuss more about law. We'll discuss. There'll be a period where we'll discuss more history. There may be a time where we'll discuss more science. I think that all of these things are fitting, and all of them have such a major impact on what we think, that you may spend certain time on each one. Do you feel me? So I'm with you, brother. I mean, I know the struggle, brother. We all of them do go together. Everything is everything. If you want to, be real about it, everything has a relationship to other things. So, you know, this is not a slight against the principles of law. We're not we're also discussing all these things as well. We're just talking right now. We're just talking about the science of it. And we're looking at the history and like where these people come from, the actual science of these things. So like when we're talking about are we the same people, um, you know, through law, there's one application. There's one thought and definition, but that law may not be the same when it's dealt in science. Like in the scientific principle, if the scientific you do an experiment, it may show something otherwise. It's just like when we're talking about Indians, Indian is a misnomer term, but scientifically that's something else. Like they're not necessarily even looking at it from Indian perspective. They're looking at it from a DNA perspective. So I get it. You got to put all these things together, and so that's why we definitely appreciate your understanding of the law and the principles when we doing this. So you know I say and give thanks, brother King, brother. I appreciate it. You know, um, What else we got on here?
I do want to say that though, because I think that is so important, because I see a lot of folks online who be talking about this topic, and then they'll have these maps. I don't know where the hell they get these maps from. They'll have these maps, these drawings, and these Photoshop pictures, and they claim that this is proof that we were here the whole time and that we never came from Africa and all this and this and that. And I just be like, man, like, I mean, to a person who probably didn't have maybe a good background on stuff, maybe that will be convincing to them. They see these maps and they like, oh, damn, that's something there. But the primary source and the DNA, man, the DNA, if anything, the DNA do not lie. If we was already here and we never stepped foot in Africa, it shouldn't be no DNA proving. I mean, it's almost like we go to court, bro. If you got DNA in court showing that this person did something, most likely they did. No matter what they said, no matter the testimonies, when it comes down to it, I think DNA has to speak the loudest out of everything else. No matter what I've been hearing on the internet, if this is true, we need the DNA and the primary sources, and then we talking for real. But all this, well, bruh, he got a wide nose, you know, his hair kind of kinky, man. But it had to have been us, or even misinterpretations of some sources, man. Like, because I see some people with some sources, but then when they start to read the sources, it's like, bro, like that don't. How did you get that out of that? Like,
I got you, brother. Hey, man. This has been a good show, man. I appreciate everybody in the building, man. Peace out to everybody. Peace, King L Bay, my brother. You know, and I appreciate you, KB, coming on here, man. It's been a long time. You know, we gonna keep getting this in, bro. We gonna build on this stuff. Y'all check out our other videos we done, man. We get into like the West African history. You know, we get into some things. So we just try to look at things from different perspectives. It's not I don't think it's anything wrong with us, you know, dealing and looking at it so everybody can get other perspectives. You know, it's so much on the internet now that you know, trying to find some kind of real stuff, you have to shuffle through a lot of stuff to, you know, get information. And you know, we just trying to cut through the facts, man. You know, this might not fit for everybody, you know, and I appreciate any information that they bring. If y'all want to leave information in the comment section so that we can check it out, and so the next time we get together, we can make corrections on what we talk about, or we can solidify what we talking about, you know. So, you know, I appreciate all the piece of, you know, the love, and we will get back together another time. So until then, say peace. Tutat Nana.
Yes, knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenous.moors.org. Your one-stop shop for indigenous needs.